Okay, so there are about to be 3 Idahoans playing a role in key positions within the Trump administration. One, Michael Boren, the founder of Clearwater Analytics. He was tapped earlier this year for the Department of Ag to serve as the Secretary for Natural Resources and Environment. Tom Schultz, whose family owns one of the country's largest lumber companies, is serving as the Chief of the Forest Service. And the third is about to be Alex Adams. He was Governor Brad Little's budget chief for 5 years, and then the director of the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare briefly. But back in March, President Trump nominated Adams to take his short-term statewide health and welfare experience to the national level. He would serve under Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as the Assistant Secretary for Family Support. But not before senators had a chance to ask him a few questions about the gig in the Senate Finance Committee today. Adams was asked about things like cuts to the Head Start program and another program that helped people pay their energy bills, as well as how to recruit more foster families.
So will you reverse the administration's actions that have harmed children in Head Start?
Senator, thank you for the question. First, let me just say Head Start is a program that's personally important to my family. My wife, who's joining me today, her grandmother ran a Head Start program in Blackfoot, Idaho in the late 60s, early 70s. So I would echo what Secretary Kennedy has told the committee, which is his goal is to make Head Start better and brighter by the end of this administration. I'm eager, if confirmed, to roll up my sleeves and work with you and others to ensure that that happens.
Do you agree that better data collection will help improve recruitment efforts established by these recruitment plans? If yes, say why.
Recruiting and retaining qualified foster families is absolutely critical. In Idaho, we took a data-driven approach to that, so I do think having states oriented around data is going to be critical. When I started, we had too few foster families. When you asked anyone how many, it was an unquantifiable number. We just needed more. So what we did is we set a target. We have a target. If you walk into our offices today, you'll see our goal is I want 150 foster families for every 100 kids coming into the system. I wanted families waiting on kids. I didn't want kids waiting on families.
The president is zeroing it out, and you're not in Congress. You're not working for Senator Crapo. You're working for President Trump, right? So my question goes back to, what's your view about zeroing out the LIHEAP program?
So as a former state budget director, I would say no budget decision is ever made in a vacuum. It has to look at the total picture. And because this is an administration that's committed to energy policies, more permits than any administration.
So you won't answer, basically. You know, when you started talking about the market, the whole point of LIHEAP is it's people who don't have the resources to participate in the market. They have no control over A, the weather, and B, the price of home heating fuel, right?
Senator, I think, in states like mine, we have policies that prohibit shutting off of utilities for certain critical months. I think you're going to have to take into account the nuances and all the other factors in the market.
Okay, so it wasn't a complete walk in the park, and we're expecting a decision on that nomination, a confirmation within the next couple of weeks. Well, Joe, you're in D.C., been there since yesterday. Alex Adams, that was kind of his focus here in Idaho with health and welfare, was on these foster kids. But what was it like in that room this morning?
I think it was an interesting situation, Brian, because that type of hearing, like the way it's conducted, is just not how it works in Idaho at the state level. So I think for me, as covering the Idaho State House, watching this, it was a big step up. But when I talked to Alex right after the hearing, he said that's really about what he expected. I watched him throughout the entire hearing, sitting just a few feet behind him, taking notes, writing down, basically ideas in terms of what the questions were going to be. Each senator had 5 minutes right on the dot to ask their questions. And you might have noticed, if you watched it live, Alex Adams was not the only person there for a nomination hearing. There was also a gentleman there for a financial position within the Trump administration. So the senators were splitting their time. But within the room, though, I think there was a lot of focus on Alex Adams and really what his accomplishments were in the state of Idaho. You would hear from some of the Democratic senators where they're talking about, yes, we understand what you did in Idaho, but can you commit to doing X, Y, and Z here in Washington, D.C.? You also see firsthand, watching it in real time, kind of the dance you have to do as someone that's being nominated to be part of the Trump administration, someone that would be working, part of that executive branch, and then kind of the oversight from the legislature. You saw a few of the Democratic senators really asking very specific questions. We heard the line, I want a yes or no answer to this question. I want a yes or no answer to that question. So, Brian, it was interesting to see how that went, but Alex felt good about it, and we are going to be having an extended sit down with him tomorrow. And I should say Dr. Adams. It was funny, Brian. Brian, they actually took his name placard and they replaced it from Mr. Adams to Dr. Adams during the hearing.
Yeah, that is interesting. Okay, speaking of interesting, we got an interesting email into the newsroom today from Congressman Mike Simpson, who wants to change the name of the Opera House at the Kennedy Center and name it after Melania Trump, the First Lady. Did you get a chance to ask Congressman Simpson about this today?
I did, and we were actually with his staff, Brian, as this news was kind of breaking, so to speak. First of all, the congressman got a lot of calls into his office. He told me, people wondering, did the White House or the president put you up to this? And he said no. And he understood that there were going to be people that were, not happy with the decision as this nomination is part of a bigger package. But he said, in his opinion, there's a lot of things that are named after people. And Melania Trump, he says, Brian, is somebody that he's seen value culture, value arts, and he thought that it really did fit.
All right, a reporter with the Washington Reporter likened this name change or possible name change to what he did with the White Clouds here in Idaho after Cecil Andrus. Is it the same? I don't know. All right, thank you very much, Joe. We'll catch up with you tomorrow.